The Alpha Scavenger is not a creature Moorcroft built. Most of the major creatures we have seen so far can be traced back to Moorcroft's work or Horzine's research. The Queen Crawler emerged from the Mire's own ecosystem. The Impaler was designed specifically to counter Nightfall's coordination. The Chimera was assembled from multiple biological sources through deliberate experimentation. The Alpha Scavenger is something else entirely. Moorcroft found it, not in a lab, not in a classified Horzine division, in the Dreadzone itself. During his research expeditions into the Dreadzone, he discovered the scavenger species and recognized what it could do. Then he opened a Mire portal to bring it back. He did not create an extra-dimensional weapon, he found one. This is the full breakdown of the Alpha Scavenger. What it actually is and why the way Moorcroft acquired it makes it one of the most interesting bosses in the current roster from a lore standpoint, how it fights and what its cannibalism mechanic reveals, and how to actually stop it across every difficulty. The Scavenger itself is where this story starts, because to understand the Alpha, you first need to understand the regular Scavenger. The Scavenger is classified as a Z, but its official description says something that makes that classification immediately interesting. It represents the complete symbiosis of the Mire with some form of invertebrate life. Not a human modified by the Mire. Not a creature engineered using the Mire as a tool. A symbiosis. Two biological systems fuse so completely that neither one exists without the other anymore. And its origins were traced back to the Dreadzone in Old London. Old London, not Antarctica, not Moorcroft's classified division inside Horzine. The scavenger species was already living in the Dreadzone before Moorcroft ever found it. Which means, when he conducted his research expeditions into the Dreadzone, he was not just studying what was there. He was looking at things he could use. He found the scavenger species during those expeditions. He recognized what it could do. Then he opened a Mire portal, specifically to transport it into our world and integrate it into his personal fighting force. The Alpha was not created by Moorcroft's research. Moorcroft found the species in the Dreadzone and brought it here. The regular scavenger hunts in packs and prioritizes attacking already wounded targets. Deadly claws, lingering toxic fumes, a heavily armored exterior that hides critical weak points underneath. And there's never just one. The Alpha takes all of those traits and amplifies them. It is significantly larger, its attacks hit harder. But the thing that really defines the Alpha is what it does with the dead. It cannibalizes its own dead. And here is something genuinely interesting about that detail. The developers have not fully explained why it does this. The behavior is described as feeding a dark hunger that empowers them rather than a calculated strategy anyone fully understands. Whatever the reason, we do know what happens when it does. Consuming fallen scavengers temporarily regenerates the Alpha and empowers the ones still standing around it. Whatever is going on inside that creature, it clearly is not something Horzine designed from scratch. A dead scavenger is not just a dead scavenger anymore. It is something the Alpha can use to make itself stronger. That is genuinely unsettling when you think about what it implies for what else might be out there on the other side of that barrier. So what does fighting the Alpha Scavenger actually look like, and how does understanding its biology change how you approach it? The armor is the first problem. The Alpha has a heavily armored exterior that makes standard ammunition largely ineffective until the weak points underneath are exposed. Piercing damage is your most effective tool for working through the armor efficiently. Getting through it quickly matters because of what happens if you take too long. The cannibalism mechanic is what makes this fight different from every other boss encounter in the game. When scavengers die during the Alpha encounter, the Alpha can consume them. That consumption gives it temporary regenerative properties and empowers the scavengers still alive around it. You cannot treat the regular scavengers as secondary threats the way you might with other bosses. They are the Alpha's supply chain. If everyone focuses purely on the Alpha and ignores the scavengers, the fight can drag on forever. Managing the pack fast enough that the Alpha cannot cannibalize efficiently is the difference between a clean fight and one that keeps regenerating on you. Explosive damage is your most effective tool against the Alpha Scavenger specifically because of how the fight is structured. The Alpha is rarely isolated from its pack. Explosive damage that hits multiple targets simultaneously is the most efficient way to deal with the Alpha's armor while also managing the pack pressure that enables the cannibalism mechanic. The weak points need to be targeted consistently. The Alpha is mobile and aggressive, which makes sustained, accurate fire challenging under pressure. Working as a team to find angles on the exposed weak points matters more here than just bringing the biggest weapons. On normal and hard, the cannibalism mechanic is manageable with basic coordination. On the higher difficulties, the speed at which the Alpha cannibalizes and the state of the scavengers it raises makes pack management genuinely demanding. Lose track of the pack and the fight punishes you just as hard as poor damage output would. The detail that makes the Alpha Scavenger genuinely chilling is not where it came from. It is how it got here. The Dreadzone is another dimension with its own creatures and its own ecosystem. The scavenger species was already living there before Moorcroft found it. He conducted research expeditions inside the Dreadzone. He found the scavengers there. He recognized what they could do. And then he opened a Mire portal and brought one back. The frightening part is not that something from the Dreadzone found its way here. It is that Moorcroft went looking for something in the Dreadzone, found it, and figured out how to bring it back. And Season 3 already revealed that Moorcroft was building an army from another dimension. The Alpha Scavenger was not an isolated discovery. It was part of a much bigger plan. And that makes Moorcroft look very different by the time we get to Season 4. At that point, he starts looking less like a scientist who simply went too far, and more like someone who was actively reaching into another dimension and pulling things out of it. The Alpha Scavenger is not a creature Moorcroft built. It is a creature Moorcroft found in the Dreadzone and deliberately transported into our world through a Mire portal. A pack-hunting species originally traced to another dimension, brought here not because the barrier broke down, but because Moorcroft knew how to open a door and decided to use it. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Because with all 4 launch bosses now covered, the series moves to the Killing Floor 2 bosses and what they tell us about where Year 2 might be heading. And drop a comment. Moorcroft did not create the Alpha Scavenger. He went into the Dreadzone, found it, and brought it back. That means at some point Moorcroft was standing inside the Dreadzone looking at a species that, until then, had existed entirely on the other side of the dimensional divide. What do you think he saw in there that made him decide to bring it back? Because whatever convinced him it was worth opening a portal for is still on the other side of that barrier. Tell me what you think.